welcome to the 16th Street Racing League here on IndyCar.com and iRacing Live. We are here at Sonoma this week, where currently the odd number cars are out for qualifying. Provisionally, Matt Pavelski is on pole. He is the driver to watch as he is our points leader. Michel Dion currently second. Check that. Nigel Marnief now moves into second. Here tonight, joining me in the booth is Cam Walsh and Rachel Whiteford. And Rachel, Sonoma, one of the trickiest tracks on the schedule. Qualifying, I think, is going to be rather important here tonight.
Very much so, Aaron. Qualifying is vitally important here. Getting track position early for qualifying and for the grid start, of course, will be a major advantage to these guys. Getting into turn 1 and turn 2 with as fewer cars in front of you will be so important.
And Cam, lots of cars here tonight. You really don't want to be in the back, but if you're in front, this track, lap traffic, it can be kind of dicey.
Well, hello everybody. It can turn very interesting very quick. We've seen almost time and again where a lapped car will have a mistake somewhere around the Sonoma track, which could look rather easy on the map itself, but with the amount of elevation changes and the amount of rolling corners, it's relatively easy for a lapped car, especially a damaged car, to crash and come back on track. You wouldn't think so, but it is just that easy. So definitely something for these leaders to keep in mind here today for this 45 lap race.
We're qualifying, as I mentioned leading off, the odd numbered cars go first. They have 15 minutes. Currently, Matt Pavelski is on provisional pole, a 1:15.733. In the second group, though, Tim Holgate, he's watching and waiting. He's been a road course specialist this year. Of course, he and Alex Simpson, two great races earlier this season. And Rachel, what position would you want to be? Would you want to go out first and set the time and say, ha, beat me? Or would you rather go second and know what you have to run?
Well, second, third, fourth, fifth. I'd like to go out really towards the end, of course. This track will change. Temperature-wise, it's not going to change a huge amount, but what will change is the rubber. So, of course, we've had rubber on the track from qualifying, from practice, I apologise. So, it's going to be important, but I think I'd like to be out a little bit later in qualifying, of course. The track will have taken some heat, which means that it will be potentially grippier, so there's the ability for the car to just handle a little nicer. So achieving that target will be easier. Of course, going out first, you have no idea what you need to reach in terms of the time. You can just do your best, whereas, well, if other guys have gone out there, they've set times, you know how far you have to reach. You can see that delta on the wheel, you know just how hard you have to push.
Absolutely. 9 minutes to go in the session. Still Pavelski on provisional pole. Nigel Marnief second, only 0.3 back. Michel Dion currently third. Austin Espetit fourth, and Dean Mull rounds out your top five as of right now. Half the field is on track. Pavelski's going to go out, and a thing with only a 1 minute 15-second lap for pole, that's going to allow for quite a few laps. So some strategy here. You can run a little conservative up front. When we get into the final minutes, well, you can really have a checkers or wreckers type of mentality, I think.
Well, yes, it's one of those things where you really got to try and pace yourself, but not just what your own personal plan might be. It's what the field is doing right now. You've got a lot of cars that are definitely just absolutely pushing very, very quickly. As Nigel Marnief, speaking of very quickly, does push himself up to the pole. He will give himself a 1:15.494, and I know on ovals we'll see qualifying lap times split by hundredths, if not thousands, of a second. Well, here I think that the gap is going to be a little bit more disparaging, as definitely a qualifying setup could most certainly be the difference between a 15.4 and, say, a 15.7, as Matt Pavelski has just done. But it's not just what these cars can do in qualifying. There is a flat 45-lap race that is going to be so ever important.
Pavelski just comes across the line, starting a flying lap, and he now knows he needs a little bit more out of his car. As close as our championship is, we have 5 drivers within striking distance of the championship lead, so one of the closest championships in 16th Street history, and those points for pole, Rachel, could come into play.
Yeah, they definitely could, and well, things were exciting last week, of course, at Pocono. We didn't have Tim Holgate running, so that really changed things up. And looking at this, well, we do have Tim Hoggett in the field today, so Tim Hoggett lost valuable points last week by not finishing. We also had a couple of incidents involving higher up drivers in the field, so everything's to gain here at Sonoma.
Yes, Holgate, he is sitting third in points, but only 6 races counted, so he has missed a race. 34 points back of your points leader, Matt Pavelski. Alex Simpson is second in points, but I don't see him on the entry list, Cam.
No, and that is definitely something, one of those things that we don't like to see. We always like to see these tight battles going forward, track after track after track, but I'm sure he will be back for Texas, as of course we all have responsibilities in our lives that must be tended to, so perhaps, hopefully, we will see him just in 1 week's time. But for right now, though, I still have to say this is quite the studded field. We have 25 cars here overall. Realistically, it's going to be about 22, maybe 23 of them that will get through, and that in its own, it doesn't sound like many cars, but for this relatively quick 2.22 mile turn, 12 turn Sonoma, it's going to get crowded real quick early on, especially when you start adding in those pit stops.
Adding in the pit stops and pit strategy, we'll get to that in a bit. Never too early to start thinking about fuel strategy, though. We'll see how that comes into play. No change in the top 3. Marneef still on the provisional pole. Going further down the field right now, Dean Mull is in 5th, Gary Borkenhagen 6th, Tim Miller 7th, and Tim Doyle, who qualifying this year in the road courses, really, well, he'll be the first to say not his shining moment, but he's been finishing the road courses, and he'll be the first one to say oval specialist. And Rachel, when you come into a road course and you know that you aren't just going to have the flat out speed, points racing, that's what you got to do sometimes.
Yeah, very much so. And points racing can mean everything. Just keeping it on the track can be a huge advantage in terms of gaining points over your rivals, and you can have rivals that are also oval specialists, so you can't win a championship being a road or oval specialist. You could certainly get a very good finish in it, hoping on your weak side, but to really win a championship you've got to be an overall driver, and we see the guys at the front, they are both.
Yes, and one thing, consistency, looking at the points, of course, Matt Pavelski very well could have won Mid-Ohio, spun with 2 to go coming out of the final corner. No wins, yet he is our points leader. Currently looking at the win column, Simpson and Holgate both have 2 wins, but the thing is, though, consistency, being there at the end. Pavelski's going to have about 4 minutes, 10 seconds left on the clock before the even-numbered cars are going to get their chance, and right now the question is Marneef's time going to hold? Cam?
Well, it's going to be very hard to just magically come up with a 4/10 of a second. Actually, it's a 3/10 of a second, splitting the 2 cars, Marneef and Pavelski. As Marneef goes for another attack here at this 12-turn Sonoma racetrack. Now, this is the IRL 2007 layout, which Sonoma does have multiple layouts. This is personally one of my favorites here, as of course we have so many different series, including the NASCAR series, as Nigel Marneef will end up going off track there, and that will set off his lap time. We'll have to get that car back on to the pit lane, but for right now I think it's just Pavelski and Marneef are just trading lap times, or at least trading what laps they can try and grab, but ultimately, I just think it's trying to catch that perfect lap with the perfect tires, as Pavelski will also have to abort a lap. And it's one of those places where it's maybe a shorter overall lap, but it does still take time, unlike qualifying, where you can just rope it around another lap. You've got to set yourself back up for another lap here at this. It's just about over a minute, about 1 minute and 20 seconds to fully reset, as Pavelski will, and he'll head back on up the straight and up the hill one at a time.
This will probably be his last lap up into turn 1, turn 2. Very easy to get on the throttle too hard there. Spin to the inside through 3 and 4. Very important. Blind crest up here, and Rachel, this braking zone right here, very tricky down the hill.
Yeah, it's really tough to get right, and you'll see this is where the guys will gain a lot of time on the racetrack. Of course, it's so easy to mess up, but at the same time, getting it right, as I said, huge amount in the lap. Looking at Pavelski at the moment, he's out on track. He's just run through there, through the carousel, running down the drag strip actually now up towards the, where it rejoins the cup layout, of course, for the NASCAR drivers. But it's critically important you maximise time, and when the car is going downhill, of course, braking in those areas, you can underbrake, you can overbrake, so just getting it right is difficult here, and this surface is a tough one. There is not a huge amount of grip. The track is a lot narrower than it looks, so as a driver, as we see Pavelski make a mistake with guys in front of him making mistakes, honestly, this place feels confined, it feels constricted, and the line is not always immediately obvious, and more importantly, the line is not always the classic racing line, especially in that downhill section.
Pavelski jumped out of that lap 1 minute 20 seconds ago. This is going to be close to see if he can get back around to start the lap before time is up. So really, he is on a race against the clock to get back around. Still second, but he would definitely like that first. And Rachel, you alluded to the Cup track. Up until 1999, NASCAR did run essentially this layout. Then they decided that, well, the track was too long and they needed to shorten it up, and they miss out on, well, I think one of the better corners in American motorsports is these, but used to be the Sears Point, then Infineon, now Sonoma Carousel.
I think it is probably the best corner here, and of course the stock cars had to run that in the past, and it's a shame they don't anymore, but I really do like the carousel here. It adds character and flavour. It's a tricky section, especially turning down into that infield section. That is really difficult to get right. So easy to run wide, put a wheel on that sand on the outside, and the car will spin on you. There is no traction. You get a wheel off the track here, put the throttle down, it comes round on you. We saw it from Will Power in the final round of the season, of course, and you know, we've seen it so many times here in iRacing.com racing at Sonoma, so tricky one to get right, very easy to get wrong.
And Pavelski comes across the line, and it is going to be very close. I'm not going to want to make the call on that if this is a legitimate lap or not. Very close. Even numbered cars are going to be taking to the racetrack, and it looks like Pavelski did miss out by just a second. So the odd numbered cars, their times are done. Marneef, provisional pole, 115.494. Holgate in warm-up ran a 116.8. We've seen all season, Cam, that what Holgate runs in practice isn't necessarily what he can do in qualifying.
No, and with Holgate here, he is almost certainly one of the cars that can definitely wheel around an oval as he just exits that carousel we were talking about. One of my favorite things, you're exiting onto a drag strip. Much grip is right there, and then of course this this strange double right-hander, which I absolutely love. This back section, the IRL section, is a section that I absolutely love, with the different off throttles and off cambers, especially that little chicane before that carousel we were talking about. But as Tim Holgate readies his car for an attack here at Sonoma with Randy Krasno seated right behind him, Tim Holgate will be taking that corner just a little wide. Now these guys, they don't take that full roundabout, the final corner as it would be in the normal layout. They take an abbreviated one. I think that was because mostly of car versus car contact. A much tighter corner keeps everything nice and tidy as Tim Holgate will charge himself up turn number 2, head up down into turn number 3, and he will continue his lap here at Sonoma.
So far, so smooth for Holgate. Right now, 15 minutes. This is a long session as Holgate gets a little bit wide, and you have to remember, if you get more than 2 wheels off, if more than half the car goes off, typically it's going to invalidate the lap. And Rachel, I think it is very important to at least set a time as Holgate. Well, I think he's trying to get pole on this lap all over the place, but I think it's absolutely vital to get a time, get into the top 10, and then go for pole.
Yeah, of course, you want to get a banking lap in there just so you've got something on the board. You've pushed too hard a few times, you've got a couple of off tracks, you've invalidated that lap, so you really want to make sure you can have something to fall back on, and, you know, that's going to be the really important one.
One of the things I think the drivers do love about this track, there's so many tracks that you really can't gain time. I'm thinking really about Barber, maybe Mid-Ohio, where you just go through the motions, but the S S section of this track is so much fun. You have to hit the first apex, second apex. It's really like a dance. And Rachel, once you get offline, at other road courses, you get on the next straightaway, you lose some time, great. This track, though, if you go offline, it can take you 3 or 4 corners to really get back up to speed.
Oh, very much so. For example, getting turn 1 right it opens up turn 2 to get right, and then 3 and 4. You get turn 1 wrong, turn 2 is not going to happen. The same goes with turn 4, heading down into the infield section and through to the carousel. A lot of these corners flow on from each other, especially in the S's towards the latter part, so you've really got to make sure you get that right. It does flow through the next couple of corners, and it can be really tricky just to get the mentality back, to get yourself back on the right line.
And that's what Cam, you alluded to, or one of you alluded to, that getting the right line here really sometimes isn't the traditional line. There are a lot of sacrificial corners. Tim Holgate moves up to 5th right now, so Michel de Jong is in 3rd. Austin Espety 4th. Marnif's pole time is remaining, so right now, as it stands, it will be a Marnif Pavelski front row, and anywhere 5th row on back here, turns 1, turn 2. Well, oftentimes you're not going to want to be there. Very close mid-pack, though. Let's run through the top 10 as it stands right now, as we are closing in on 10 minutes ago. Of course, Marnif Pavelski, front row. Currently, Michel de Jong and Austin Espety will be your second row. Tim Holgate is 5th, and he is coming through the S's right now. We will see if he can improve and maybe move into the front 2 rows. Dean Moll, Eric Davis, Joe Flanagan, and Gary Borkenhagen, and Tim Doyle rounds out the top 10. Mid-pack right now. Up front, we only have 3 drivers in the 115s. But looking mid-pack, this is going to be a very fierce race from about 7th on back.
Well, that it will be, as we're watching with Christian Steele, Tim Holgate, and many of the other cars that are on track right now. But ultimately, though, it's just going to be one of those tracks where there will be a group of cars that pull away. I think it's going to be Marnif Pavelski. Michael Dejeron is also going to be pulling away with a 1:15.8. He's right behind what Pavelski's times were, but we'll have to see what those 3 cars can do. And then you're going to have these multiple groups. You've got 7 or 8 cars in the 118 brackets, another 5 or 6 in the 117s brackets. So all of these cars, a lot of these teams, I'm sure, are just saying, okay, look, go out with your race setup, just get some laps in, get us in the race. And then you've got other teams which are going absolute gangbusters and trying to get their qualifying times in. So as Holgate wraps it around one more time, we'll actually come up onto the rear end of Christopher Demerit. And then we can definitely see, as Christopher Demerit was, his last set was like a 1:18 his fastest, and then Holgate's with a 1:16. So these lead lap cars, it's not even necessarily that they're going to be that much faster. It's going to be 2 seconds a lap faster. So it can really change the dynamic, especially for Holgate right now. He has been trying to get around Demerit. He parks his car right in front of Holgate, and Holgate will have to abort that lap. He doesn't even give him the satisfaction of crossing the start-finish line, and Demerit, he will improve, but only by a 10th or 2. And I got to remember, he's trying to qualify as well, but still, it's just real rough right now on that track. You wouldn't think it'd get too busy there out on track with only the even-numbered cars out there, but well, that's where we get right there.
12 cars, 2.2 miles, well, more like rush hour on the interstate. Holgate re-enters the racetrack, and now he has Brian Karzeski in front of him. And that's a tricky thing, Rachel, is trying to find open track as Holgate is now slowing down. I think he's realized he's going to need it, but so often when you slow up like that, as you come back around, all of a sudden, there's another car coming out of the pits.
Very much, but, if you can get a nice slow lap on your out lap, you can really pace things. And yeah, there'll be a guy coming out of the pits, and there is an onus on the driver coming out of the pits as well to, if they see somebody coming, stay out of the way, don't exit in front of them, make sure you're in offline if you do. So there's onus on both ends, really. You have to set up your lap to really get to the opportunity, which benefits you, of course. You can heat the tyres, you can make the car a little bit better prepared. But at the same time, people coming out of the pits also have to be very conscientious and not just plow out regardless right in front of somebody starting a hot lap. So It can be tricky, and yes, it's perhaps fairer to solo car qualify, but at the same time, this is an aspect of racing we have to deal with. You have people coming in and out of pits. This is how we qualify, and that's just how it's going to be.
Yep, absolutely on that front. Holgate, he's going to have a little bit of clean track this time, so if he wants to improve from his currently 5th starting spot, this is a lap to do it. Only 7 minutes to go, which will give him maybe 2 laps if he has enough fuel for just 1 lap. That's what we've seen drivers here do tonight, not really stringing together. Tire degradation here with the elevation changes tends to fall off. We'll talk about that more in the race on how that will affect pit strategy. But Cam, you were calling it when he was trying to, on his previous run, get clean track. You think that's something we see in the races? Holgate gets a little bit of wheel spin out of the hairpin, so easy to do, but lap traffic, even though Holgate 2 seconds a lap faster, he really couldn't do anything with demerit.
No, if the car that's in front of you wants to stay in your way, as he'll come up upon Jackson Lee, and Jackson Lee will very kindly allow Holgate to run right through. That is a section that actually, that turn they just came through is one of those sections, and then the run up into turn 1 as well is also one that you can catch a relatively slower car, as Holgate will run a 1:16.4. So even with that huge tail slide coming off of the exit of the drag strip, as well as getting around that lap car, he still had the speed in the tank. So Tim Holgate, if he can string a clean lap together, he's only got 5 minutes and 30 seconds, so really only 4 minutes. So he's got about maybe 2 laps. So maybe this might actually be one of his last runs, which is strange to think about 5 minutes, but he has speed sitting there on the track, and Holgate is just trying. He's trying what he can do to get a clean track, as he will have Brian Karzweski, who is on a run of his own to get into a higher qualifying position, as Holgate will let Demerit and Karzweski through. So it's just it's Holgate right now is where I'm keeping my eyes on, as Austin Espety is right in front of him. Michael De Jong, after doing that a couple of those qualifying laps, he did a 1:15.8, but that still wasn't good enough to pass Mike Pavelski, and Nigel Marneffe is still sitting on that provisional pole.
And Marneffe, all he can do now is sit, watch, and wait. Holgate that previous lap, as he's going to let more drivers by this time. That previous lap, that little bit of wheel spin and getting around Jackson Lee, I think both of those cost him maybe a quarter second, maybe a little bit more. Don't know if he would have cracked the 1:15 barrier, but definitely 4th spot S&S, but only 500 separate them. So Holgate has the speed. Can he find the track, and can he put it together? Rachel, when you have constant laps like this where you're on a run and a car gets in front of you, does that throw your rhythm off, or does he just need to put that aside and get on it this lap?
It will throw your rhythm, but at the same time, you've just got to find a way to deal with that, and that's part of racing. You've got to be able to focus on what you have to do, and you can't let another car on track, wherever they are, throw that off. He needs to really get his mind in the game. He can get that focus going, and he has to just be able to go, this is the lap, whatever happens, happens, and it will benefit him, but at the same time, yes, you've got to be able to not be distracted by other cars.
And of all tracks, I think this track might be the easiest to get distracted. Very good lap so far, at least appearance-wise. Holgate now going to go into the hairpin. Tricky thing about this hairpin, braking markers, very hard to distinguish. You really have to almost go in between the light poles. No real markers, or really, there is no 5431 marker. Holgate now going to come through the chicane. This lap looks good. So easy to lose or make up time here. A little bit of slide on entry. Much better exit than his previous 1:16.4. Just the hairpin now sets between him and the finish line. He may have enough time to get one more lap in. Cross the final corner. Let's see where he puts him. Does he join the 1:15 club? Yes, he does. A 1:15.705. Move him to P2. Wow,
Yes.
Cam. Wow.
Yes, just I knew he was on a good one. This moment that he cleared that the exit to drag strip where he, that double right-hander when he had I actually think he might have even dumped the clutch or something. He got well off it, controlled all the way through that double right-hander, nailed the chicane, and it was just off to the races from there. A 1:15.7, very, very good. I think he's going to be happy with that, and he's just going to sit that one back. Nothing Pawelski or Marnif can do, and they are just going to let it all happen on the track. The top running qualifying car right now is Xavier de Carvajal, the 1:17.2. He's on track, still trying to get his lap time down in that number 72 car. But as many cars start finishing up their qualifying runs, as the field will solidify itself as every driver on track is qualifying. So it does look like we'll have a full 25 car field. Just many drivers are taking that little moment, that calm before the storm, before, Aaron, we get to this 45-lap race here at Sonoma.
Yes, Xavier is going through the hairpin right now. He is currently sitting 7th. And going back to Holgate, that's what I mentioned. In practice, he only ran a 1:16.8. So I don't know if I ever want to play poker with Holgate, because you really don't know what type of hand he is actually holding. 1.1 seconds faster in qualifying than in practice. A lot of drivers show what they have. Holgate, though, keeps it until qualifying. Xavier is going to go through the hairpin once more, coming across the finish line. Currently provisionally 7th. Eric Davis is in 8th behind him. Dean Mull in front of him 6th. Let's see. Xavier crosses the line, and 1:17.062. That does improve. Move him one spot up on the grid. He goes to P6, and he has time for one more. 30 seconds left in this qualifying, and no, Xavier didn't like something, so that's going to end his run. So qualifying wrapping up here, Rachel, and wow, for a qualifying session, that was entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, qualifying at Sonoma is never a simple or easy process, but a good one here. It's been exciting. Of course, traffic management is always a major factor in qualifying, so we got our fair share of that today. And well, we've got an interesting group at the front. Marnif, Holgate, Pawelski, Young, Espity. Our real road ringers here are going to be bringing the noise at Sonoma. Well, we'll see who can raise a bottle of wine at the end.
And Demerit, I think, final lap, yes, moved Demerit up to 8th with a 1:17.343 at the buzzer. So a great lap by Demerit, moving him up to 8th. And I think that's pretty much going to do it for qualifying. No other cars on a lap, so after session 1, Marnif had to wait 15 minutes, but his time of 1:15.494 is going to hold out. He is going to set the pole here in wine country. Tim Holgate is going to be 2nd. Matt Pavelski 3rd, Michel de Jong 4th, Austin Espity is 5th, and our first 4 drivers are in the 1:15 bracket. Only one driver in the 1:16 bracket, Austin Espity with the 1:16.3, then at a 1:17.062 is Xavier de Carvalho. Dean Mull, Demerit, Davis, Flanagan round out your top 10. Joe Branch and Kristen Steele will be in row 6. Gary Borkenhagen, Tim Doyle, row 7. Walters and Karzeski, 8. Tim Miller, Jack Turner, then Terry Mattinson and Randy Krosno. And Randy Krosno, if there is an incident on track, he's got to be one of the most unlucky drivers here in 16th Street, often not of his own doing. Hopefully he can see the checkered flag here in his home state. Then it's Brian Simpson, Scott Manifold, Dan Lee, Inch, Jackson Lee, and Michael Peters going to round out the 25 cars. The field's going to be grading here in just a moment. And, well, lots of storylines here tonight. We do have the point battle between Holgate and Pavelski. Simpson not here tonight. So Holgate could take the points lead. Pavelski could pad his points lead depending on what happened. Marnif gonna start on pole, but Rachel, pit strategy. It is a short track. Where do you feel your car? Of course, you don't want to have to do one extra stop, but you do want to have that leeway where if you are coming up on a bunch of lap cars, you may want that flexibility to be able to pit a lap early so you don't have to try to navigate through them.
I think if anything, the amount of fuel on board perhaps might be a little flexible here, so I'd be inclined to take enough for a late stop and have the flexibility to go earlier if I need to, depending on what other people do. I don't want to be coming onto pit road here with other people at the same time, especially if there's someone right in front of me. That can cause a huge amount of checkups and you lose time getting on and off pit road. So I'd like to be able to just be flexible, so in my book I would have options.
And coming into the pits, you got to be careful too, because here you pit sort of where NASCAR goes straight towards what is their turn 11. So you have to really be careful, because you can really gain a lot of time going full speed straight. Unfortunately, if there's a car in front of you, Cam, you really don't, well, that can end very poorly.
Well, a slight miscommunication can make the difference between a race-ending incident and simply another lap here at Sonoma with dealing with lap traffic. We've got a couple of cars that were quite well down off the qualifying pace, but for the most part, though, everyone seems to be right on par with each other, so it'll definitely look like an interesting race here at the Sonoma Raceway as the cars are pulling away behind that American Childhood Cancer Organization-sponsored pacing car, as Nigel Marnief will take the field around this one pace lap around this 12-turn Sonoma racetrack.
Yes, Race Control has been enforcing the 107% rule this season. We'll see if that comes into effect with the two cars that you mentioned. One pace lap here, and this track, very hard to really get good alignment from the field, which really is beneficial for the pole setter. The pace car is going to go straight. The field will then turn, and then we will be racing up the hill where, turn 1, turn 2, incidents here, rather common.
It is, you're going to have, it shouldn't be too cold of tires. It's almost 80 degrees Fahrenheit here with a rather clear sky overhead, so it should be easy enough to get these tires up to grip as they will come down that lovely carousel corner, as the entire field's still going too wide. It actually narrows up here, so as it comes to this final section show, hopefully everyone's giving each other plenty of room, but then they've got to close each other up real quick for that final corner, and then it's not necessarily a start-finish straight, is it? It's a right hand, kind of an arc, followed by left hand, and then you're already going up the hill. So if cars aren't single file by turn number 2, there could possibly be huge amounts of danger, and I already expect to see a couple of cars going towards the inside dirt and trying to shortcut that corner if something ever seems to be going wrong, as many of the cars are already going through the gears to get themselves into lower gears, well, we'll just have to see as they start that final corner, Aaron, to start this 45-lap race.
45 laps, we will know who will be our points leader going to Texas, which I consider a wild card race, but that's next week. This week, field makes the right-hand turn onto the straightaway. Nigel Marnief hits the gas, and we are green here in wine country. Marnief, a great start. Holgate did have to lift. That's going to allow Pavelski to the inside. They almost make contact side by side. Who's going to lift? It's going to be Pavelski. So Marnief is going to lead us as we have trouble in the back.
Well, we almost expected that, Aaron. We have had some trouble. In fact, we had Eric Davis off there, along with the driver of, just looking at the car number actually for him, that is the 72 of Xavier Di Cavello. And we also had a bit of an incident up ahead where Austin Espete ran into the back of Michel de Jong, not heavily, but well, we always expect a turn 2 lap 1 crash here at Sonoma. We weren't disappointed.
Not disappointed, but there wasn't that heavy of contact. We may be able to maintain all the cars. I don't know if anybody really is going to be eliminated in that crash. Tricky thing for Holgate on that start, he was on the inside coming to the green, so he really had to lift to not jump the start. So Marnief maintains the lead. We'll get a replay of the turn 1 incident after the first lap. We're going to maintain this battle for the lead right now, and Holgate this year, he has been a master of picking up speed while following a car. And at this track, you just want to stalk the leader, try to make him make a mistake, and that is what Holgate has done all season long. So 1 lap in the books. Let's go back, see what happened on that start, and Rachel, take us through it.
Well, there was a few checkups, and I think it was actually down to the original checkup between Espete and De Jong. We saw Xavier Di Cavallo and we saw Eric Davis coming into corner together. You see them there on the replay, but the checkup ahead caused Di Cavallo to check up a little bit more. Davis goes into the back of him, and it's putting around, not heavy contact, but enough to get that car loose and spin it out as they came to the lightest part of the track, the crest, and well, both guys seemed to realistically get away with this one somewhat, but they lost a lot of track position.
Track position, don't believe either of them. No, all cars still on the track, so nobody made a pit stop, so there may be a little bit of aero damage, but nobody took advantage of coming into the pits. Bernie,
Yes,
again, go ahead, Cam, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say real quick, the only damage that I'm really seeing is a little bit of rear-end damage on Xavier's car from the tire barrier, but it doesn't seem to be slowing him down at all. He's already making an attack on Brian or Simpson's car. I thought Espete might have had a little bit of front-end damage, but as the lap's going on, his wing is clear, so a little front-end damage from Espete, who had a very early retirement last week at Pocono. We don't have to worry about that nightmare again.
He will appreciate still being in the race always. Well, never want to end a race early. Let's talk strategy as lead right now, Holgate, and this is what we've seen all season. Holgate really has been the stalker this year. Really doesn't make his moves till late, but one thing we do have to mention, all cars get 10 push to pass, and that isn't pushing with the front wing. You get to push a button, get some extra horsepower for 10 seconds. Really not that many places to take advantage of it. Really, the drag strip's going to be the place, but you get 10 of them. Do you want to use them early, Rachel, or do you want to save them for the scraps at the end?
I would probably use a few, but not right now. Potentially, this is my call here, strategy-wise. Whilst the tires do go off, I would like to possibly come in at the start of that window, get some clean track, use those fresh tires when I possibly can. And I'd probably keep some of those push-to-passes for then as a strategic deployment, just to boost the lap times, increase the gaps over that pit cycle, so once we've all come through the cycle, I'd be a little bit further ahead.
And Cam, what's your philosophy? What's your strategy with the push to pass? Early or late?
Well, when it comes to these things, I always end up waiting far too long for them to actually make an effect. I always seem to save them until which time it doesn't matter whether I have them or not. But either way, it's just a matter of figuring out when to use them. I think there's just a couple of them now. I mean, obviously, I think Holgate and Pavelski might be keeping their thumbs near that position, as well as all the other in-car adjustments as they have available to them. It's just another tool in the bag that they could possibly use to catch Nigel Marneffe. Marneffe, for all the lap time he had, he is only just sitting half of a second ahead of Holgate and a full second ahead of Pavelski, which in road racing is nothing. As they will roundabout that double right-hander once again. I think Marneffe, if you're Marneffe, I think if you're in a section that you're very comfortable with and you trust the car going maybe a little faster than what you're familiar with, then yeah, you can get on that button. You can get yourself just a little bit of a gap.
Strategy has been everything this season. We saw Mid-Ohio typically isn't known for its great racing, but the battle that Holgate, Simpson, and Pavelski had, one that's definitely going to be in the record books for a long time, but it came down to strategy on when did you use the push to passes and lap traffic. We will get to lap traffic, maybe just about 5 laps from now, as the back of the field already 30 seconds behind. No changes in the top 3. It seems as if Marneffe is just the Pied Piper right now, and Holgate and Pavelski more than willing just to sit back. Behind him, Michel de Jong is in 4th, Osman Espete 5th, Dean Molt having a great showing thus far in 6th. And let's go back further in the field. Brian Karzeski is in a battle, which, well, he is not just in the battle, he is in the midst of a hurricane as 5 cars all within about a second and a half of each other. And this track, Rachel, this track is prone to this, that you can be, and we saw this with Holgate in practice, you can be a second faster, but if you're not fast in the right part of the track, you're just sitting there waiting.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can really end up in a bad spot here on a racetrack, but You've just got to be careful, and hopefully it'll pay out.
Speaking of careful, Joe Branch has broken free of the pack of 5 cars led by Karzeski, which also includes Eric Davis, who was involved in that first lap crash. But he is sitting in the top 10 in points, so he's going to want to rebound from that. Bradley Walters sitting in the end of that train in 15th, but as Davis is going to go to the inside out of the hairpin, this is the battle for 13th. Can't get it done. Multiple lines through that hairpin, but radius equals speed, and if you really try to crimp that line, Cam, you're going to sacrifice the exit.
Yeah, and there are ways of getting an open wheel vehicle around on the inside, and it's not just how Davis did it. He didn't track out enough to really allow the accelerator to stretch itself out, to really catapult yourself towards the start-finish line. Karzeski, well, even though he had given up the inside line, which was the right thing to do, he just used the outside line to propel the car around him. So as Bradley Walters is sitting there right behind Eric Davis, and Davis will go from the offensive to the defensive. Karzeski there, as they are still looking at Joe Branch. Oh, Eric Davis just closing right up. And this is one of those things, I think, as far as setups go. Eric Davis in that Banshee Autosport vehicle might just be running a lower downforce setup than Brian Karzeski. Now, as with ovals, as you can just see just how much he closes up. It goes from a gap of all those high-speed corners as Karzeski once again dropping the hammer as they finish. As they're looking to finish, as Davis will just throw the car onto the inside, but Karzeski once again will get on the accelerator early. Definitely some big challenges here, Aaron, as they will go too wide up the hill.
That will be a time to use a push to pass. I'm going to say Eric Davis used it there, and he is going to make the pass. And Rachel, you talked about this in qualifying with Holgate, making mistakes, having cars in front of you, and putting it aside. Davis, qualified 9th, sitting 14th, now up to 13th. How do you put that aside when you had a top 10 car, you get relegated to the back, and you know you're faster than the cars in front of you? How do you stay patient?
But you just got to have a rhythm, and that rhythm might include some flexibility, and right now that's what you've just got to have. You have to realize, I'm not at the front, I'm not at clean air, I have to deal with this, and there are ways around it. You can go off strategy, you can find clean air. So he's just going to have to do what he has to do to find that optimal spot.
Yeah, we have an incident with the Christopher Demerit has looped it out of the hairpin, so he spins it out of 9th place. That's going to move everybody behind him that got around him up a spot, but that's a classic spin, Cam. Very late in that hairpin as you're really shifting through the gears, and if you miss that gear shift just wrong, well, Demerit spun it out.
Yes, and it's not even that. He looped it in the hairpin on the final corner as well. I had actually seen he had looped it almost fully in that double right-hander. Right off of the drag strip, so Demerit possibly the setup just not ready for full stint racing. But as Demerit will wheel that car around once again, will end up behind Randy Krasno, and Demerit now perhaps handling a very, very poorly handling race car.
And these tires are very fickle. Once you heat them up, it's kind of hard to cool them down, and if you spin them out again, Demerit now is out there. This track's going to feel about as icy as possible, so the rest of the stint for Demerit is not going to be all that enjoyable. Christian Steele just got a little bit sideways. This is the battle for 9th as this battle mid-pack still raging on and trying to find where, well, Eric Davis has finally broken through, so his speed is showing. He is up to 10th, and Rachel, you're right. You just have to find your rhythm and go with it and just get them when you can.
Yeah, you've got to be flexible, especially at a track like Sonoma where so many things can happen, incidents, and just the track can go from the front of the field to the back. We saw that with Davis and with Cavello. They're now in a whole different race to what they expected, so you've got to be flexible, got to be adaptable, and you can bring that in. You can have a good day. If you can't adapt, Sonoma will eat you up.
As we now go back to our leaders, Nigel Murnif is still our leader. Lap traffic will be coming into play here rather shortly. They've already, I believe, put one car a lap down as Michel de Jong, I think, had mechanical issues.
Yes, he did. Something has happened with that automobile, and he is no longer on track. Not quite sure, but very unfortunate. He was running up in fifth.
And a very difficult break there. Leaders are going to come into lap traffic. That will be Michael Peters. And, well, on road courses, oftentimes, and this is what we've seen in 16th Street League all season long, typically you're going to have one car, then maybe a car 2 seconds back, then 4 seconds back. When you have 3 cars together, Cam, it can be very difficult if you try to let them by in a short straight and you let 1 or maybe 2 of the 3 by and you get to the corner and that third car is expecting you to let them by. Well, contact can occur.
Well, it can. You let that one car go, as Michael Peters is going to be just that one car. He'll let Holgate through. He'll let Pavelski. He'll actually ride the outside grass. Did a very good job of not letting that car get away from him, as Pavelski, Holgate, and Marnief will get through without so much of a blink, as Holgate will close up just like that on the rear end of Marnief, and Pavelski right on the rear end of Holgate. I have to say, just throwing this out there, if I was going to have to use that push-to-pass button, that I would definitely doing it leading up to that double right-hander, as that would definitely give you enough of an overspeed to challenge Marnief. But here's the thing, though. We're only seeing Marnief's car as a leading car. He could very well have a setup that is extraordinary in traffic.
And traffic, well, in about 20 laps, we're going to be talking about traffic quite a bit. But if I'm going to use my push-to-pass, I'm going to use it as, I think Holgate, he's lost a lot of time. He did not get off the hairpin all that well the previous lap. And this could be maybe Holgate's car going to the downforce setup. You can be faster in one part of the track, lose time in the other. But if I'm going to use my push-to-pass, and I know I'm faster in the car in front, I'm going to hopefully have more fuel than him and use it when he pits. Then I'm going to use it when he's not in front of me, and I'm going to be able to really use it to the maximum ability. Another car going to be coming into play, that is Dan Lee Inch. They should overtake him this next lap, but right now Nigel Marnief has what perhaps is the largest lead of this race. Whether or not that is just a bad lap for Holgate or perhaps tires running in dirty air. Oftentimes we talk about that on the oval side, but here too on the road course, if you're behind a car a good portion of the race, that can heat up the tires. Let's see how Holgate's gets through this corner. A lot better than the previous time. And Pavelski, too, is losing a little bit of time. So whether or not they're falling off or if Nigel Marnief is speeding up, that is to be seen. But Rachel, right now, top 3 running very close together. And if you're Holgate or Pavelski, there's no real reason to even force the issue right now, is there?
No, I think Rachel was just stepping away for but one moment's time, but I can fill in with the much more American answer, which is unfortunate for us all. No, I just throwing this out there. I think Marnief, as far as road to oval racers, I think Marnief might just be one of the best road racers in this series. So he's going to know not necessarily what to do on track, but in the setups of these cars, as Pavelski is dropping well back now. That car is starting to slip. It is lap number 12. I'm not necessarily sure exactly how long these fuel tanks will go, but I'm seeing a lot of wheel movement, and I don't mean the actual 4 tires. I'm talking in that small little circle just ahead of the driver of Matt Pavelski. It's seesawing a lot back and forth, and it's writhing with this car. Of course, no power steering here, as Nigel Marnief and Tim Holgate, they were able to keep it. Holgate bouncing right back with a lap that was just almost 0.3 of a second quicker than the Marnief. So he's bouncing right back. But you've got Pavelski, he's seesawing, as Holgate, though, he's just trying to keep that speed up with Marnief, and I'm not sure necessarily if I think Holgate's car might be one of those cars where one lap it's great, and another lap, well, it's not.
He carried a little bit too much speed into turn 2 that previous time, locked up, so those 0.3 gained were instantly lost. But for Pavelski, Cam, well, I think once you start losing a little bit of time, You lose your rhythm, and then you start trying a little bit harder. And I know when I race, if I have a car in front of me and I know I'm faster, I'm going to gain time. But the second that car starts inching away, that's when doubt creeps in. That's when you start trying to brake a little bit later, getting on the gas a little bit sooner than your line, and one mistake compounds into another, and what is just a half-tenth deficit turns into a quarter second, turns into a half second.
Yes, and then it can all bottle up and just let go in one quick, easy to point to incident as you'll go off track or drop a tire. But I will have to say, though, for all the complaining I was doing about just one lap ago, Matt Pavelski, the fastest lap that time by with a 1:17.5. As we will look our cameras with the expert eye of Hugo Louis back to position number 53, or not position number 53. Oh my God, the amount of cars that would be. No, car number 53, that's Joe Flanagan. He is racing with Eric Davis, Joe Branch, Xavier DiCarlo, who is recovering from that earlier incident. He's still nursing a little bit of that rear end damage, and Brian Karzalski. So you still got this big core of drivers as they all struggle for positions with each other. You just got to throw it out there, though, that at some point the leaders will be catching up with this pack of cars as they are just going hammer and tong. Joe Branch and Xavier D. Carvalho, I got this, is right on the rear end of Joe Branch.
And he tried to make an overtaking move into turn 4, thought better of it, and rightfully so. This may be a time. Is he close enough to use the button? They come down to the hairpin. Xavier's gonna think about popping
on the pit road.
So Holgate's gonna be our first taker into the pits.
Yes, let's see. I'm not sure if anything has happened. Perhaps his tires were swamped and he said, look, I'm going to come in and get the full stop. Now, we haven't necessarily talked a lot about pit lane here, but it's a very difficult on-ramp, and it's a very, very long pit lane as all four the air jacks will deploy on Holgate's car. They're going to fill it with fuel. This is a very, very interesting strategy. It might very well be, even though it's the first pit of the race, might be the call of the race, Aaron.
I don't know, Cam. At 8.3 second stop, but obviously maybe the speed he was running maybe he was a little bit lighter. If he would have waited 2 more laps, he would have come out in front of the cars in front of him. He's going to go to the inside of Borkenhagen, who's going to give him no issues. Good for him. Now he's going to have Tim Doyle, who probably will return the favor. But oftentimes we talk about pitting and the cars that you're going to avoid in front of you. What your crew chief and car engineer have to measure, though, is where are you going to come out in traffic. Obviously, Holgate, 2-stop strategy, expect him probably to pit on lap 30, splitting this race up into thirds, as Pavelski and Marneef both in the pits. So, well, for this outlap now, Holgate, will he be able to take the lead? Right now, though, Marneef and Pavelski on the pit limiter. This pit road so long. It
is an extraordinarily long pit lane, as it's probably one of the longest they are going to go to just in this season. Pavelski and Marneef coming in. Now, these fuel tanks, they might seem to be taking on only just as much, but Marneef will get the quicker fuel as it is going to be a 7.9 pit stop for Marneef. Marneef is out and on the way, and it will be, Holgate is going to be right behind once again with Matt Pavelski still remaining in third. Now, these fuel tanks, they are actually going to be regulated just for this race at about 80% of the capacity, which shouldn't actually matter that much. I think the tires are falling off just before then anyways, so not necessarily an important factor. I think tires are going to be what is going to be the one that's important.
So at the 1/3 distance, the first round of pit stops, no changes in the top 3. So if we thought the pits were going to swap the positions, well, they did not. Lap traffic will be coming into play here shortly. Let's run through your top 5 at the 1/3 distance. Austin Espety, well, he's just the de facto leader right now, as he does come into the pits, but he will get credit for leading a lap. So once that cycles through, Marneef, Pavelski, Holgate, Borkenhagen still yet to pit. Dean Mull, Eric Davis, Joe Flanagan, and Xavier. Perhaps we should wait another 3 or 4 laps, wait for the pit cycles to go through. But what we do know, Nigel Marneef is our race leader. He has been from the get-go, minus this one lap. And, well, this one's shaping up to be yet another 16th Street awesome road race.
It is, and I'm just throwing this out there, though. Marneef, with that quicker pit stop, even though he technically, he put in one less lap of fuel. I mean, that's small potatoes. He had such quicker pit stop. He's 1.6 seconds ahead of Holgate, who's just about a second ahead of Pawelski. So Marneef, though, the biggest lap lead of his race so far, and I gotta wonder if maybe Holgate isn't maybe kicking himself in the boots just a little bit as Pawelski looks to the inside of Holgate, thinks well better of it. Holgate didn't even have to do any defending at all whatsoever, as these top three cars are still going hammer and tong through the S's section of Sonoma here, the southern side, as Pawelski will actually he'll sneak right on up to Holgate. I actually thought there might have been a little bit of an incident there, but no, they all play nice and cleanly as Pawelski is just closing right up. I think Pawelski's definitely wanting to get by. He looks at this. I think this might be one of his only chances, as the rest of the field is cycling through the pits. I think it's relatively safe to go look at those the overall standings now.
Well, one thing, the person that's enjoying this battle for second, this is an intense battle, but I can guarantee you the person who's enjoying this the most is Nigel Marneef. For Pawelski, passing here can be very difficult, and he really has to weigh his options right now, because if he gets into a dogfight for this second spot and can't get it done, well, the more Holgate gets defensive, the faster Marneef is going to pull away. So if you're going to try to make a pass, you are going to have to absolutely make sure that you can make the pass, because the more you fight, the leader's just going to get further and further and further away.
Well, it is. I mean, those are just little specks in the mirrors at this point for Nigel Marneef. I'm doubting he's... to be utterly honest, I don't even think Marneef's even bothered to look in the mirrors at any point of this race. He's just focusing on his lines because he knows he's the fastest car, at least so far as Pawelski.
Holgate goes in too hot.
Oh,
Here comes Pawelski to the outside. This is your battle for second spot. Pawelski gets a little bit loose.
Whoa,
and they make contact.
Oh, no.
They make contact. The two, Pawelski, Holgate spin. Such huge championship implications here. And, both drivers not going to enjoy that. Who got the worst end of that? Here comes Holgate up the inside. Is there suspension damage? We are going to get a replay of this momentarily, but very tight track cam, and, two of the best drivers this season in contact.
Yeah, I think what has happened is we are getting the replay on the screen. Holgate blew it real deep, and I think Pawelski read it perfectly, and he ended up getting side by side. Then he lost the rear end. He ended up going into onto the curbing and into the dirt, and by then they were already supposed to be getting on the brakes, and obviously sand is not necessarily the best braking material. I'm not a rocket scientist, but I know that. And the car just slid right into the rear end of Holgate there. Oh my goodness gracious, I think they might have been going so slow they might have gotten away with it. That would be insane if they had done just that.
Well, I think we saw the incident at the start of the race, and obviously nothing malicious there, and I really think Pawelski let Holgate back around as they got into the straightaway. I think Pawelski gave the spot back. Obviously nothing malicious there. Pawelski just got that left rear onto the curbing, and hitting the brakes when three tires are even and one is up in the air, well, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know bad things happen. The one person who enjoyed that the most, though, Nigel Marneef, largest lead of the race, up to 6.3 seconds. Let's take a look at the lap times. Let's see if there is any damage. Marneef, last time, 117.6 compared to Holgate's 117.9. Of course, he did have a bad run, and Pawelski got a little bit loose in a very bad spot, so I do have to wonder, is Pawelski's suspension okay?
I think everyone, I don't know how, but I think everyone has actually managed to make this work. Ding all these DW12 chassis all you want. I remember when these first came out, and the thing that everybody pointed to were those, what they'll call the dumb rear bumpers, those tire barriers, which of course are not only there to protect those tires for delamination purposes, but to also help the aero get through to prevent flip overs and blowovers. And I think for all it's worth, that little rear bumper there, it's on the left rear tire, has protected Holgate.
So Holgate and, well, the championship implications of both of those drivers had been taken out, would have been just catastrophic for both of them. And Alex Simpson, who isn't here tonight, wouldn't have lost that much ground. But Rachel, after you've been in an incident, and, well, we do think Pavelski let Holgate back around, it can be very hard to re-get your bearings, especially when you're fighting for the lead, and now all of a sudden the leader's 7 seconds in front.
Yeah, very much so, Aaron. And of course, these guys, well, they're at the top of their game in terms of sim racing. They know how to get their head back in the race car after they've had a moment. But one thing that always niggles at you, they do not know how much damage they've had. They don't know what touched. They don't know that it was wing to bumper pods. So in their head, they're thinking, have I got suspension damage? Is something bent? And to an extent, it makes you drive a little differently. You nurse the car perhaps more than you need to, because you think, I can't push it as hard as I'd like to, otherwise something might go wrong. But there's always a little fairy on your shoulder saying, ooh, take it easy.
Well, one thing about taking it easy, one thing we have to look at, competition usually drives people faster. Marnif's times have slowed up. When you know you have two hot shoes behind you, you're going to speed up. His times just aren't as fast. The previous lap was at 18.2. He did pick it up that time back into the 17s, but now he's going to have Randy Crosno and Tim Miller, Terry Mattinson to deal with this lap and next lap. And you're right, Rachel. When you are on your game, sometimes you can fuel off of that adversity. Whereas some drivers make a mistake, they compound it, they overdrive, things go bad. Other drivers use that as a motivator, fuel, and, well, Holgate and Pavelski, you're right, top of the game, and that's what I'm expecting.
It's not even just that. We were talking over the lap when it, possibly having this hurting the drivers as far as the mental laps during that. Well, Matt Pavelski just ran the fastest lap of the entire race between all drivers. Well, actually, I lied. Tim Holgate has that, but Matt Pavelski's fastest lap for his race as a 1:17.2, and Holgate with a 1:17.4. So these guys bouncing right back. I really lied. They both have dipped into the 1:16s at some point as they'll cross the line one more time. A 1:17.1 for Pavelski, a 1:17.2 for Holgate, and a 1:17.6 for Marnif. I think Marnif, he's going to be having a little bit of issue with some of this lap traffic, but Holgate and Pavelski, well, they've had their incident, they've looped the cars around, and they are coming for Marnif.
Now, what a story it will be if either of those drivers can pull off this win. Marnif now dealing with traffic and got a little bit of aero push there, going to lose a couple tenths. He's going to go as Krosno's going to let him by. Thing to watch out for. Oftentimes, lap cars are going to be more than generous to let the leader by. It's like, here you go, take it. Second, third, fourth on back, sometimes just not as willing. There's just something psychological. You let the leader by, but the ones behind them, yeah, you really don't want to lose that much time. We'll see if that comes into play. This race, now half over. Let's go through your top 10. Nigel Marnif is your race leader. He's led all but one lap. Tim Holgate second, Pavelski third, and what has been a very entertaining battle, sometimes overly entertaining between those two. Ospen Espety, Dean Moll, top 5. Tim Doyle. Well, this is a classic Tim Doyle road course race, qualified 14th up to 6th. Gary Borkenhagen, haven't talked much about him, of course. If you are mid-pack, oftentimes you really don't want to be mentioned, because if we are mentioning you, well, odds are you're off the track. Eric Davis, 8th. Joe Branch, 9th. And Xavier de Carvalho rounds out your top 10. 16 cars on the lead lap, but that number is going to be quickly dwindling at the pace that Marnif has been running. 18.2 that previous lap, a 17.4 for Holgate, but that doesn't tell the entire tale, Cam, as those two lap cars that Marnif passed, Holgate and Pavelski, are going to have to negotiate with them as well.
Yes, and Holgate, he has spent a lot of time between the last couple of seasons and this one going through lap traffic. I think he's going to have a nose for it, as well as Matt Pawelski. Pawelski, before hopping full time into the Dallara DW12, one of the many cars on the iRacing service, he had been in a series where he had to go through many lapped cars, and Rachel, I believe you might have seen something on the track.
Well, absolutely. I just want to keep an eye on, of course, the times from Arnif. We did say after that incident that Holgate and Pavelski were 7 seconds back from your race leader, but right now that gap is shrinking. Down to 4 seconds last time by. It's now 3 seconds. They are flying. They are about half a second a lap to 0.8 of a second a lap faster than your race leader. So, well, Marnif could be looking in his rearview mirror very soon.
Very soon indeed, as Holgate gets around Krosno. Pavelski is going to follow, so now 2 cars separating them, but with 20 laps to go, only 3 seconds, you don't really have to be that much quicker to close that gap. So what could have been catastrophic, Cam, when I saw that contact, I thought it was going to be race over for both of them. They both kept it off all metallic objects, the wall, the tires, everything. I thought it was going to be race over, but well, what might have been race over may turn into one of the stories of the season.
Oh, very much so, and it's, of course, these things happen at the same time, but you just got to make sure, realize these guys didn't hit anything vital, so as things stand, it was a fairly, well, it was dramatic, but at the end of the day, didn't affect the cars. So track position lost, yes. I was fired up, certainly.
And fired up could be why we're seeing these fast lap times. Thing is, though, when they pit, the pit crews may want to fit some of that damage. A wing change may take 0.3 of a second, and many road courses, Rachel, 2-3 of a second, field spread out. Oh well. When we've got a race this close, those 2 or 3 tenths, that could be the difference between Pavelski leapfrogging Holgate, or Holgate maybe losing too much time on Marnif.
It could be, but it's, well, Pavelski's held up with Holgate so far, so I don't think if he has got a damaged wing, then with a fixed one, he'll be even faster, so I think he'll catch up those 2 or 3 tenths, but as we say that, they are coming up towards the back of some of the lap traffic again, and then it'll be time to make a move towards Nigel Marnif.
Holgate got held up a little bit by Terry Mattinson. Ooh, Mattinson came in a little bit hot, almost got into the rear end of Pavelski, and for Pavelski, I don't know if he was looking in his mirrors, but that was probably a little bit closer than he would have liked. Marnif now going to have 2 cars in front of him. Bradley Walters running 14th. Christian Steele, who's had a couple, trying out Rallycross a couple times this race, so that battle going on in front of him. And Rachel, when you're in a side-by-side battle like this, and you have the leaders behind you, you really pay attention to those blue flags? It's kind of hard when you're in the midst of a battle.
Well, you've got to, Aaron, and you've got to really pay attention to that because they want through. And if anything, blue flags can help you because, well, the guy in front or behind you is going to get a blue flag as well. You can use that as a pick. So use those faster cars that are coming through as an advantage, get them to help you come through, or if you're the car defending, just let them pass in a more suitable position and you lose less time. So it actually can be used tactically for a lap car.
Can be, although being side by side, let's see what Marnif does here as well. Very sporting there. Christian Steele lays over, lets Marnif by. So let's see if the strategy you predicted, Rachel, comes true. As now Christian Steele, all he has to do is maintain a little bit of speed, but sometimes when you let the leaders by, if you let up too much, as I think we just saw, that's going to negate any possible advantage.
Yes, just how these advantages go, and it's not even just necessarily that these lap times are getting traded back and forth and back and forth. I think maybe Pavelski might have made a couple of good changes on that car, either with the track bar adjustments, well, actually not track bar, A or B adjustments, and on roll bar, excuse me, as he seems to be getting on the speed just a little bit better than he was in the beginning of this race. Holgate there, still, of course, doing what Holgate always does and doing a good lap time after lap time, but Marnif still just slower than those 2 cars. I mean, Holgate a 17.6, Pavelski a 17.7, Marnif a 17.98, almost an 18 and he's only got 3.8 seconds between the two, so they are going to have to come through the pits, of course, certainly. Definitely one more time. I would say 2 more times. I would venture a strong guess to 2 more times indeed, as Holgate will get past Bradley Walters. Bradley Walters pulling well over to the right and allowing those cars through, just as a lapped car to me is always expected to do, but it's a pleasure to see them doing that, to allow these great battles to happen, as Nigel Marneffe is actually going to come upon a car that had just spun out, Dan Lienge, and we'll have to see. I'm sure Marneffe will just sneak right on by that. He will. Lienge will let him by. Now, Marneffe, just how many more laps do you want to go until you get to that pit window?
Well, I'm expecting one more pit stop. I think they've broken up into thirds, 45-lap race. I believe we have lost our 4th place car. Osman Espati has had an issue, so running in the top 5, Espati out of the race, so that's going to be an unfortunate thing. Might have been a mechanical failure for him. Holgate now.
Actually, Aaron, I have got
ahead.
information on that. It was lap 27, going to the S's, caught a curb. The car just turned left on him, straight across the gravel, which had no grip, into those tyre barriers. Suspension damage on the left-hand side of the car, front and rear quarters, both damaged. That car had to be towed back to the pit road by one of the wreckers. Crew aren't looking like it's likely they'll be able to get that fixed. They've pulled him into the garage.
And that's one thing we haven't mentioned here, the curbs. Very fun to use here, but if you catch them just a little bit wrong, especially in the S's, there's not much runoff room, and very quickly your race can be done. And that's one thing, Osman Espati was really in an island of his own, not really contending with anybody. And, well, I know I have found when you're in the midst of a constant battle, it's a lot easier to keep your concentration, as Pavelski's going to be our first one pulling into the pits. So, minus the curb talk, Pavelski's going to be the first one in. Came in through what is the NASCAR Turn 11 on the outside of that. Very hot. You can actually gain speed here, but now the long track down pit road, Rachel.
Yeah, such a long pit road, especially curving around there, so really got to hope you just want to keep your patience, of course. It's very, very frustrating to go down there, but he'll get through, come into our pit box, gets 4 new Firestone tyres, Sunoco race fuel, and he'll be able to get underway as soon as that crew get to work.
It's a long wait, waiting. There he goes, out of the pits. Now, what type of traffic is he going to come out in? He's going to have Christian Steele just make a pass, so about 1, maybe 2 cars, Dean Mulls in front, but Dean Mulls had a pretty good pace. He might not catch him on track. That is going to be key to see where he comes out. Now, Holgate, Marneffe, they're next up in pit stops. The previous lap, Marneffe outran Holgate by 0.3 of a second, so we're seeing Holgate gain 0.3, lose 0.3. With 15 laps to go, Cam, he can't afford losing 3 more tenths.
No, and Marneffe will pile it right in, and he will get right right on it. Those brake.
Holgate into the wall.
Absolutely, go
Sorry,
into Holgate.
Cam.
Yes, no. Oh my heavens, goodness! I think he might have done damage to his car there, Aaron.
Oh, that is trying to make up time. Holgate came in way too fast, bounced off the wall. How much damage? Right now, he's only doing 45 miles an hour as they go past Manifold's car in the pits having a barbecue, but Holgate's car.
I'm not sure if he actually did anything. I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be insane if 2 times Holgate has had what would normally end I don't want to say normally end a race, but we have seen it go either way. Holgate.
This is a long stop.
Oh, it is.
There's
They're
damage.
going to fix the damage. Yeah, they're going to let that fixed. I was going to say it didn't look like it did too much, but it doesn't take much to do the damage to that car. He will get the repairs, and his bid for the win will be off. But either way, Marneffe, though, having won the race onto the pit road, as he was able to just glow those brakes just a little brighter than Holgate into that rather sharp right-hand entry. As now Pavelski, as you can see in the rear view mirror of Nigel Marneffe, is just but a multicolored speck.
So Pavelski now inherits second spot, and when we get to Indy at the end of the season, that 1, maybe 2 spots that Holgate loses, which We don't know how competitive Holgate's car is. There is a huge time gap between third and fourth. So if Holgate can nurse that car around, it may not be that devastating. But Rachel, when you go from contending to a win to just nursing a car, I don't know if the word disappointment even begins to express what he's feeling right now.
Absolutely not. He must feel so gutted and so angry with himself, and these are the sort of mistakes that you really cannot shrug off, even as a driver at the top of your game. It's very easy to shrug off an incident on somebody else or racing too hard, but when you have only yourself to blame like he did, he's got to be really hurting for that one. It's going to really put him in a bad place, but this is what Pavelski needs. Pavelski is in second place with a clear second place over Tim Holgate, so this is brilliant. That number 75 Rockstar Super Sours machine is exactly what they need.
So, what? Unfortunate break for Holgate, but there is 15 seconds between him and Borkenhagen. Borkenhagen, I still think he needs to pit, but might not be completely catastrophic. If Holgate can finish third, well, the bleeding on the points won't be that bad. And of course, Holgate third in points, one race less than our points leader, Pavelski. So Pavelski right now, second place. Oh, for him, of course, he would want to win, but if you beat your competitor, Cam, who's probably your fiercest championship contender, it's got to feel like somewhat of a victory, doesn't it?
Well, I do have to say that, and, well, you know, Marnief might have asked me on a personal favor basis to not say this, but barring any incident involving lapped cars for the next 13 laps of this race, knock on wood, Nigel Marnief will have this battle won. I believe he did a 1:18.6 last time by, with Pavelski doing a 1:18.4, but I don't know if you can make up 5 seconds in such a time. But if something were to tragically happen to Marnief, which we're all hoping here that everything goes to plan, at least on track, that Pavelski will finish in second and Holgate will finish in third. And I think that's at the very least a great takeaway. Is I think Holgate he just did a 1:17.6, so his car, for whatever repairs that crew was able to perform on that car, it did a very, very good job. And then making sure that front suspension damage, that front suspension was good. They probably checked over everything before sending him out. But either way, as the rest of the cars come through the pits, Xavier de Corvajal is coming off of onto the pits. Gary Borkenhagen coming out of the pits, as he will just come out just behind Eric Davis. But yeah, overall this field, I think, as Marnief will actually pan right camera right, as he's right there behind Joe Branch, Demerit, Corvajal, and Borkenhagen. Those four cars are all lined up together. But either way, you know, it's just, there's so much time of something that could go wrong. I don't think Marnief will have anything happen, but you never know.
And what Cam was alluding to was speaking about lap traffic for those that watched on Race Spot last year. Cam mentioned that, and immediately as he finished that sentence, the leader was taken out. So hopefully commentator's curse doesn't happen yet again. Right now, fastest car on the track is Pavelski. Previous lap, a 17.1. So the gap closed by 0.3 of a second, but the lead's 4.7, Rachel. It's going to take a lot.
Absolutely, Aaron. It'll take a huge amount for Matt Pavelski to get up there, but he's been given the biggest break of the race. Tim Holgate's mistake on pit road means that Pavelski now has clean traffic. All he has to think about now is lapped cars. Marnief is a big target for him, and if anything other than that, he is actually in sight now, or relatively so. He can see him occasionally in the track, and that will spur you as a driver on to get right up there and chase hard. Of course, 5 laps to go. Can it be done? We'll see. Lap traffic could be a big thing. It's 3.7 seconds. I think it can definitely be done. And wow, Pavelski, we just seen there, he can definitely see Marnief now. The hunt is on. Can that 75 car get in there and steal one from Marnief?
One big help there, Tim Miller just let him by on a very good spot. That car cost Marnief a little bit of time. It will cost Pavelski none, so some money gained in the bank right there. Next car for Pavelski to get by Joe Branch, who's running in 10th, having a very solid run. haven't talked much about him. Had a huge battle earlier in the race, but you're right. The hunt is on. There is blood in the water, and Pavelski is coming quickly. Lap 35 of 45, and Cam, blood in the water. He smells it. He's on the hunt. Can he do it?
Well, it's just a matter of that patience thing. We've already seen an incident or two when he has been trying to put that car in a passing position, as he will have Joe Branch just ahead of him. He'll get on the throttle, having to give a little bit, maybe a little bit. All right, how about a lot of bit of counter steering as he gets on the throttle there?
Still Cam, still a 17.4, even with that wheel spin, a 17.4, so he gained a 10th even with that wheel spin, but now what can he do with Joe Branch?
Yeah, so he'll have to get through either Joe Branch, kind of let him through the carousel here, or perhaps not. Now, of course, everyone knows each other here. We've been racing with each other all season long, so perhaps Joe Branch a little more familiar with Marneef than Pavelski. And as Pavelski will now get the overspeed, and there we'll go. He will get past Joe Branch, allowing him to get past nice and easily as Pavelski. We were talking about those push-to-pass buttons. Well, I'd be on them now. We've only got less than 9 laps to get it done, as Pavelski will get on the happy throttle through the S's one more time. As you see that little glittered chrome tail feather in the distance, and that just it really sharpens the eyes, it sharpens the senses. Just like how right after that incident, Pavelski was running the fastest laps of the race. I think right now, if he can barrel down, this could definitely go towards his favor. But I will say, though, catching up to somebody is a lot different than passing somebody.
Marneef, that previous lap at 18.0, Pavelski loses a 10th, and more importantly, while we were watching Pavelski overtake Branch, Marneef overtook Demerit and Xavier Del Cavallo. So 2 cars separated our first and second place cars. We have less than 9 laps to go. It's going to take a drive to be remembered for a very long time now for Pavelski to catch back up, Rachel.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think he could definitely do it. Pavelski's in a perfect spot. 3.8 seconds it was at the line last time by. We're going to see pretty soon, in a half lap's time, what that will be. There is traffic in the way, so this could be a hindrance. At the same time, we have still got 7 laps. A lot can happen. The pressure's now on Marneef. He's not in a comfortable spot to simply cruise. He has to push. He has to keep the gap going. Last lap for him, 18.061. And for Pavelski, a little bit slower, so he did lose the 10th last time by. We will find out what happens this time. But at the same time, it is very close, as we have something going on between Christopher Demerit and Xavier de Cavallo.
And they're in a battle in their own right for the 8th spot. It isn't as close as it was about half a lap ago. Let's see what we've run this time. Pavelski, 17.7 compared to our leaders, 17.7. So they are now mirroring each other's lap times. Lead 3.8, updating the Tim Holgate status, running third, and he actually gained a little bit on the leader that time. So that does you no good when you're 16 seconds behind with 7 laps to go, but looks like he is going to salvage the 7th spot. Currently only 7 cars on the lead lap. That list is Marneef, Pavelski, Holgate, Mole, Doyle, Davis, and Gary Borkenhagen. Borkenhagen, though, about 4 seconds from falling that 1 lap down, and Pavelski really not gaining on the 2 lap cars, Cam.
No, not at all, and that could really be the race, as it were. If he can't get past Demerit and Carvalho, what's the point of really trying to chase Marneef? I think the lap times have really stabilized. I think the tires might have been wearing in. Pavelski, for all it was worth, hell, he might have even just ran out of push-to-passes. So as Pavelski works his way through one more time, as Christopher Demerit and Xavier de Carvalho, they're still going at it right ahead of Matt Pavelski. You can't blame them. They're fighting for their own fight. This is the very end of the race, as Xavier is in 8th and Christopher Demerit's in 9th. And, of course, this could spell disaster for Pavelski. I think it's doing just that, as Pavelski's last lap was a 17.5, Nigel Marneef with a 17.8, but it's a 3.5 second gap, and you've only got just about 5 seconds to go.
Now we go up to the leader because in front of him, the battle for 6th is raging on. Eric Davis has recovered beautifully from that first lap incident. Gary Borkenhagen right behind him. Their previous lap times almost identical. Now the reason why this battle is so critical is Nigel Murnif is closing up. Now going back behind, side by side in front of Pavelski is, let's see what Pavelski does here. Doesn't wanna, Pavelski makes contact and Pavelski spins it. Pavelski spins the car off into the grass, now doing a little bit of agricultural duties for Sonoma Raceway. I'm sure they appreciate that, but for Pavelski, the opportunity at any chance of this race win is over, but I think he got away with one. That could have been worse. I think his car is going to be okay, Rachel.
Well, it's hard to tell. That was a much bigger hit than we saw when he had the incident with Tim Holgate, but, well, Pavelski starts handling reasonably well right now. It's tough to say, we'll have to see lap times, but, oh, big impact there with Demerit loose. Pavelski wasn't willing to really back out, play safe, and see what he had to work with in terms of room, so he had to push. Awkward situation. He did what he had to do. No chance of catching Marnif now unless we have a mistake from the Flying Dutchman up ahead, but it's just gutting for Pavelski. He had a real shot at catching your leader here. I hate to say he'll have to settle for a podium, but, well, he's going to have to settle for a podium.
I think one thing that shows, though, Pavelski was not points racing. He was going for it, Cam.
Oh, he absolutely was, and I can understand why. I actually think that perhaps if you were Demerit, obviously, if he had fully saved it that first one, as Holgate has also spun it around. So I was going to say now Holgate has the opportunity to catch, but he dumped the rears into the dirt coming off the exit of turn number 4 and put it into the dirt, so he won't have any problem, at least with Dean Mull. But I was going to say... It's just a matter of who's spinning out more now. As Pavelski, though, will recover. That car seems to be fairly well, working in fairly good for working order. No, he was going for it. If Demerit was to make that pass, was to save that car and hold it over to the right, I think Pavelski would have had an easy time. Getting through. But ultimately, though, Demerit needed to control the rear end and punted Pavelski into the dirt.
For Holgate now, and he sort of got in my case 2 years ago on this, as it started at Barber, but for Holgate, if he ran a perfect race, he was unbeatable. Once he made a mistake, though, well, the mistakes in the road races sort of compounded. Last season, though, absolutely perfect. Today, though, that spin, well, I'm sure his car isn't handling as great, but ever since the contact with Pavelski from behind, then into the pit wall, that spin, of course, he is going to get away with it. Well, I say that. There are still 4 laps to go. He has 20 seconds on Dean Mull, but, Rachel, that's one of the things. You can get rattled just a little bit, even if you are an international caliber driver. When things go slightly askew, you get hit from behind and you try to gain that time, especially in the pits where it can be very tricky, well, things go downhill fast.
Yeah, it's easy to see an opponent making a mistake and try and capitalize and make your own mistake at the same time, so you've really got to balance that one out and not exceed what the car's going to let you do. Of course, you can be your own worst enemy. We've seen that so far a few times today, and these drivers doing the best they can to screw it up for themselves as well as others, but you know, it's like you say, it's tempting when you see that, when you get told you're closing in on the car, they've had a mistake, you want to push hard, you want to capitalize, and, well, sometimes it can lead to your own little slips of concentration.
For Murnif right now, really, I don't know if he has anything to gain by trying to put Eric Davis a lap down. Once we get to the finish of this race, as we are working lap 42 of 45, the margin of victory is really not going to show just how competitive this race was. Currently 11.8 seconds back to second, 28 seconds back to third. That does not tell the tale at all. At this point in time, Marnif, do you even try to lap a car? I know Young-O several seasons ago, it was a game, lap the field. But right now for Marnif, he's seen his competitors make mistake after mistake. There's no point in doing this, is there?
Well, you just focus on your lap times, keep it in the brackets. You don't want to go too off the throttle, and then your entire turns are going to be messed up. Your car is not going to have the downforce you expect it to, and you're going to end up wrecking yourself by trying to go too slowly, which is a very strange thing, I suppose. But look, if the cars in front of you let you by without too much of a hassle, yeah, absolutely. But, go take them. But if these cars are starting to fight you, if they're even looking like they're going to show a sign of aggression, just back it out. You've got an 11-second lead over Matt Pawlowski, who's got himself a 15-second lead over Tim Holgate. So, for all things considering, just let it roll.
Let it roll. And at the same time, the reason why Eric Davis really isn't just rolling over is he has Tim Doyle about 3.5 seconds in front of him. So even though we are in the waning moments of this race, Davis has his eyes set on a top 5, and both Davis and Doyle inside the top 5 in points. And for Tim Doyle, we have not talked about him exactly, but his qualifying time did not show whatsoever the speeds he is running. Now running in 5th.
Yeah, Tim Doyle, I mean, he's the mover of the race as far as I'm concerned. He started 14th all the way up to 5th, but right behind him I was looking, and Gary Borkenhagen has the rear end of his car, I was going to say, alongside Borkenhagen as far as the movers go, but Xavier is running right on his rear end. Xavier DiCarvalho is coming right up. As far as recovery drives go, I gotta give it to Xavier. That the first lap, second turn incident, Xavier has absolutely pushed that car to what it can do with that little bit of rear end damage, and he's almost looking to make a full recovery and finishing where he started, which for somebody who was in the tire barrier is a very, very good good race at that.
Well, Rachel pointed out perfectly when she said, moment like that, you just get over it, go and drive. And Rachel, I don't know, maybe he was listening, but I think you might get the driver coach advice of the race.
Absolutely, and I mean, I have this all the time. I sit on the pit box for a teammate of mine, and half the time when they've had something go wrong, you've just got to calm them down and let them focus. If they got damage, you tell them it's not as serious as they thought. If they get involved with somebody else, you say, no, you're fine, your lap times are great, you lie, you cheat, you fool them into thinking everything's fine, because about 80% of this is driver mentality, driver's mindset in the car. They get flapped, they make more mistakes, so I like calming them down, keeping them on the spot, and things go well.
Speaking of going well, the white flag is flying currently. Nigel Marneef has half a lap to go, and when it comes to a flawless drive, Marneef has put it in. His competitors today battled hard, made some unforced errors. Marneef has just run consistent lap times. Cam alluded to the fact that perhaps he didn't even look at the mirrors, and that might have been a good thing while his competitors were concentrated on each other. He just hit his marks, just the chicane and the hairpin. Now to go. Plenty of time, 11 seconds back to Matt Pavelski. Marneef is our leader. What a drive it has been. One more corner to go, barring anything just catastrophic. He has this in the bag, round the corner. Marneef now sees the flag stand, sees the flag. He's weaving back and forth. Nigel Marneef is going to win at Sonoma. What a drive, Cam.
Absolutely. Nigel Marneef, not a wheel has gone wrong at all. While Matt Pavelski, as he crosses the line in second position, he qualified third. I'll take that. But the story says so much more. He had looped the car no less than twice. As Tim Holgate, who also through twice he has dodged bullets. The rear end simply taking a little bit of damage, and the suspension needing a good check over after he creamed into a concrete barrier, at least rode that barrier. Tim Holgate comes home in third, and Dean Moll, for all the talking we have been doing about all the drivers up front, Dean Moll will be finishing in fourth position. He will be crossing that line after starting in seventh, and that is also a fantastic race, at least for Moll. And Tim Doyle also is looking to make his way across the line.
Yeah, Tim Doyle gonna be, well, even if he were to, well, I guess he does have Eric Davis behind him, so this is a battle coming to the line. Davis is going to be a little bit too far back, but for Tim Doyle, I think he will take a top 5 on a road course any day of the week and just be ecstatic about it. He gets 5th. Eric Davis comes across the line in 6th. 6 cars on the lead lap. And Rachel, again, I mentioned margin of victory doesn't really show just how competitive this race was here today. Typically, Sonoma gets strung out, but it did get strung out, but not for the traditional reasons.
Absolutely, we've had some silly mistakes today, but that's just the way it goes sometimes, and you've got to make sure you don't beat yourself. Too many guys today went out on track and they beat themselves, and only one of them didn't, so that was Nigel Marneef. He's the guy doing donuts, and they're the ones having donuts done on their heads by their crew chiefs.
So let's give a full field rundown here at Sonoma. Nigel Marneef at 59 minutes 32 seconds is your race winner, running an absolutely flawless race. Matt Pavelski, well, tonight could have been what could have been. He finishes second. Tim Holgate made a good comeback after being punted by Pavelski. Pavelski gave the spot back, but Holgate's undoing contact with the pit wall. Dean Mall, a very strong 4th place. Didn't talk about him much this evening. Oftentimes, that's a good thing when we're not calling your name. Tim Doyle, qualified 14th, finished 5th. He is going to be ecstatic. Eric Davis, a very another solid run for him, finishing 6th. Xavier De Cavallo finishes 7th. Gary Borgenhagen finishes 8th. Joe Branch, solid run, 9th. Brian Karzeski runs out the top 10. 11th through 20th. Christian Steele finishes 11th, had several bouts of rallycross this race. Christopher Demerit, 12th. Terry Mattinson finishes 13th. 14th, Bradley Walters. 15th, Tim Miller. 16th, Jack Turner and Danley Inch, 4 laps down. We missed it, but bad luck missed across. Randy Crosno, yet again, 11 laps down in 18th. Austin Espity caught a little bit too much curb in the S's, 19 laps down in 19th. Joe Flanagan in 20th. Michael Peters, 21st. Jackson Lee, 22nd. Michelle DeYoung with a mechanical failure, 23rd. Scott Manifold, 24th. And rounding out the field, Brian Simpson. That is your finishing order here today. And Cam, we didn't see the photo finish or the runs to the line like we saw at Barber at Mid-Ohio, but nonetheless, this race had a high entertainment value.
Now that it did, strategy did end up playing a part, but it was not just the strategy of the pits, it was how they recovered from their individual incidents. And Rachel, I think it's very quick to say, though, right before we get to the driver interviews, that this race did provide quite a race for us. It had it all. High speeds, drama, and some incidents that definitely have implications for the championship.
It certainly did, and the championship will be very interesting after this one. There's some good results by people who needed it, and some bad ones by, well, ones that did not need it. And a lot of drivers making silly mistakes and some, shall we say, impatient problems here. But Sonoma is a vicious track. It will chew you up and spit you out. And, well, wine isn't only grown on the hills here in Sonoma.
We now go to the Racer post-race show where we are going to talk to your winner, Nigel Marneef. Nigel, great run here this evening here in Sonoma. Almost a flawless race for you. Take us through your race.
It's purely about control, I guess, on this track, especially with the hot weather and having a massive headache before the start. Controlling becomes ever more important. Thankfully I didn't bin it though, which I did think I would do.
Hot conditions out there, almost 80 degrees Fahrenheit, plenty of lap traffic. Were you, we mentioned on the broadcast that, well, we figured you weren't even watching your rearview mirrors. As Holgate and Pavelski battled, were you aware of just how fierce they were fighting, or were you just running your laps, focusing on your lines?
A bit of both, really. Like a huge shout out to Al Nagy, who's in the chat as well, who was my spotter this evening. He pretty much kept me up to date when to back off, when I could back off if I wanted to, and what the gaps were and all that, and when they went into the pits. So yeah, with the hot conditions, in the lap traffic, it's all about controlling the pace, like not driving over your head pretty much. That's the thing you have to keep mind of.
Before the second pit stop, Holgate and Pavelski made contact. Did you back off speed just a little bit when you got a lead, or did they just pick it up perhaps using push to pass?
Well, you never know what red mist does to people, so I can't speak for them, but I obviously, well, like, I did back off because, like, whenever I saw the gap was about 5 seconds, I actually could breathe a bit and let my headache take control of me, as it were.
Lap traffic, kind of, well, fierce here tonight. Any issues out there, or did you weave through rather nicely and they played politely?
I mean, I've done Indy long enough to know what to expect when it comes to lap traffic, and their rules and our rules as the leading cars and them as the lap cars. So it's just about being patient, because they will let you through anyway, and just make sure they have enough space as well so they feel comfortable whenever they let you through.
Well, you thanked Al Nagy. Anybody else you want to thank here this evening?
Hold my beer, Motorsports. Didn't hold my beer tonight because I had a headache, but I'll try to hold my beer tomorrow. And all the, pretty much 16th Street and the turnout on YouTube, it's amazing seeing all the comments, even for people that haven't even touched iRacing yet and they see this thing and become interested, so that's really cool, like on IndyCar and iRacing and everyone involved.
It has been a awesome season thus far. Looking forward to Texas next week.
For me, it's being European, it's incredibly difficult. It's 3:45 in the morning. I don't think I'll do many more races this season, as I've said before the season started, so I kind of have to pick and choose the races which I think will take the shortest amount of time, pretty much.
Well, perhaps going out on top, that's Nigel Marnif, your race winner. Now we are going to go to Cam Walsh, who is standing by with Matt Pavelski.
Well, Matt, we're just going to pick up the conversation that we left off in Pocono. We're here at Sonoma, so rather than talking about the road course, let's talk about how it happened. I have to say, as far as all the drivers involved, you probably had one of the most interesting races. Why don't you just at least get the start off for me? How did the first section go as far as Marnif, Holgate, and you?
The first section was a lot of fun. I mean, we were right on top of each other. I think at certain points we were within 1.5 seconds, just all three of us. I know I looked at the relative, and sometimes we were all within 1 second of each other. That first few laps went very well, and then I think after the first pit stop, Tim and I had a nice little battle. He made a bit of a mistake out of the chicane. I went for the move, wasn't really my finest hour. I tried to cross over, completely misjudged it, hit him, 100% my fault. I'm really glad that didn't really give him much damage. I'm glad that we were both able to continue at a relatively fast pace. Gave him the spot back before turn one, just didn't want to take it like that. And then I don't know what happened to him after that, but I mean, after that it got relatively quiet. I was chasing down Nigel a little bit, but I mean, even if I caught him, which I probably wouldn't have, I don't know if I would have gone for it, because it's just, unless I'm racing Tim, which is for the points lead, I'm not really going to be trying to push it as hard as I would, if it was against a Tim or someone that's I'm racing for the points lead. But, had that little issue with the lapped car, but, no damage, and just brought it home.
Well, it's speaking of lap cars, that did kind of have an effect, as the only 6 cars on the lead lap, which is for a road race is still a good number, to say the least, for an IndyCar series that predominantly races ovals. So Sonoma, I mean, it's really hit or miss as far as tracks go. You had that incident coming off where your wheels kind of dropped in the dirt and you ended up rear-ending Holgate, but for the most part you guys left everything out on the track, at least. Marnif, he didn't have any issues. He came away with a very clean win, but here at Sonoma, though, at the very least, that's not a bad race at all, as far as you're all things considering here, to lead into next week's race in Texas.
No, it's not really bad at all. I mean, gained on the points lead a little bit. And, just looking forward to Texas and Watkins and the Indy. I mean, so far it's been fun. Even if today didn't come away with the win, I'm completely happy with the second because, like I said, I gained some points on Tim. And yes, I mean, I can't really complain that much. It's not really time to think about what could have been. It's more to think about, what the situation is going forward. And going forward, the situation is looking like it's going to be interesting to say the least.
Well, Texas is it's a rather interesting joint. I guess I never really knew much about Texas until the Justin Wilson Memorial race that we had earlier in the year, and that introduced me to the IndyCar racing here. And I think I've fallen in love as far as a spectator goes with the Texas racecraft. And how's about this? How do you think Texas is going to go for that number 75 car next week?
I think it's certainly going to be a bit of an interesting experience because Texas, you really have to watch your tires, and it's so easy to burn them off there and just put yourself in the wall. It's just such a challenging track for that, and so when you're in traffic, you really need to be careful. I think it's just going to be about keeping an eye out on where Tim is, keeping an eye out on where I am on the track, what my spacing is to other cars, and just trying to keep that car nice and I wouldn't say free, but relatively planted to the track with the front end. It's an interesting track. Anything can happen, but I think it should end up a little bit like Pocono, where you're gonna have your interesting racing, but at the same time, it might get spread out a little bit just because of all the pushing that you can have in certain corners of the track.
All right, so as we look forward to Texas, we'll just have to leave it at that. Maybe next week. Next week we should have the normal crew, so we won't be able to carry on this conversation 3 weeks in a row. But overall, though, Matt, a good second-place finish here at Sonoma. Anyone you would like to thank out there in the world?
I gotta thank Chris Demerit. He was a big help in terms of just keeping everybody calm on the radio. And then he's going to hate me for this, but he's watching, and I know it. Mike Perry for the comic relief.
Right. And with that, I guess we will, Tim Holgate's not there right now. We're going to go over towards Rachel Whiteford and Dean Mole.
Very much so, Cam. Thank you. And I'm here with Dean Mole. Dean, you came home today in P number 4. Perhaps not what you would have wanted, but after qualifying in P7, is a top 5 a race win for you?
Yeah, absolutely. This has been my best finish of the season, and Nigel, Matt, and Tim were in another class. I didn't have anything to catch up with them.
Very much so, of course, but this will do you some good in the points, of course. So, obviously, things are very tight at the front of the field, but still looking at a potential top 10 in the points?
Hopefully, I've got to string some pretty good finishes together. It's been a tough season so far, but hanging in there and battling every week and hoping to pull out the best finish possible.
Well, a great result here today with a P4. Anybody you'd like to thank? Any sponsors?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the guys at iRacing Today Motorsports and iRacingTodayRadio.com. Trevor Cameron and Chad Dalton do a weekly podcast, and go over to the website and check it out. It's a good show.
Well, we will do that indeed. Thank you very much, Dean. It was great having a chat to you here today. Of course, you came home today in P number 4. Great results, and probably with a few of the top 5 who didn't spin.
Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate it.
Now that was our first, second, and fourth place finisher. As we are waiting to see if Tim Holgate's gonna make an appearance, waiting for him.
Well, he claims he's AFK, Aaron, but we're going to sit here and we're going to talk about him until he shows up. Tim Holgate, of course, came home today in P3. Incredible run from him, but just a few mistakes throughout the race that really hurt his performance today. I'm sure you guys could agree most of those incidents somewhat self-inflicted.
Yeah, once the contact, as Pavelski mentioned, he took blame for that, and very sporting to let him by, but after the fact, both Pavelski and Holgate were going up, they were catching, but when you hit the pit wall trying to gain that time, and I think that's what he was doing. He could have gained half a second with that perfect entry. A little bit too fast there and conked the wall.
Yeah, this pit road, very, very difficult to get onto, and we have to actually emphasize that. I mean, Tim's a great driver, and this pit road is evil. It's almost as bad as exiting pit road on the Daytona road course. It's so tight, and it funnels down. It becomes a really tricky corner to go through. But yeah, it's just one of those things we have to deal with, and maybe Tim's back if we shout loud enough.
Oh, not yet, but one thing, Rachel, that we didn't mention is when you do go offline, one thing, you're running through the marbles, so as you go into that area, whereas on the old service iRacing without marbles, you would have had perfect grip there, but it's dusty, it's dirty, it's marbles. You go in there, you turn expecting it to turn, and all of a sudden you're off on a one-way ticket into the barrier.
Oh, very much so, and well, those tires, once you slide them, of course, with the new compounds and the surface model we have, once they're slid, it becomes a really difficult situation, of course, to get those tires cooled down again, because once they're heated up, they become so slushy and slippery, and they have no grip, especially if it's your rear tires. We do have Christopher Demerit here, who wasn't talking to us. Well, he's trying to hide his identity, but it's not going to work. So, Chris, P12 today, 1 lap down. Not a brilliant result, but you finished this one unlike previous races.
Yeah, I finished finally. I finished kind of at Mid-Ohio, although I had the same kind of spinning but not hitting anything race going on. I don't like Sonoma. I'll leave it at that. And I finished, and that's all I have to say.
Well, Cam was just discussing with you in chat, of course, how you managed to hit Matt Pavelski from in front of him, which is an impressive feat.
Yeah.
What happened in of course, this was going through the hairpin, heading towards the S's section. What happened, of course, we saw you get loose and save the car, and of course Matt really had nowhere to go, so kind of a racing thing, but you had your own moment. Just a tricky part of the track with the way the rubber was building up.
Yeah, we came out of the carousel, but I was right behind Xavier, and we caught a lapped car, and that allowed us to actually go 3 wide for a little bit before I had the inside one into that weird double apex 2-turn complex. I just got onto the throttle a little too quickly trying to make that pass and kicked the rear out, and I guess I punted Matt from in front of him. But
which is an impressive
yes,
feat, let's be fair. It's an impressive feat to backflip over and hit the car behind you. We are amazed by your abilities there. Well, thank you, of course. You came on P12. We are finally going to be able to interview the elusive Mr. Tim Holgate. He's been hiding possibly more effectively than American politics dignity at the moment, but as it stands, you came home today, Matt, in Tim even. I'm thinking of the wrong person. Tim, you came home in P number 3. Final step at the podium for you. A very, very long day.
Yeah, it's not exactly where we wanted to finish, but we'll take a podium here. I think we had the car maybe for the win, definitely for second. Definitely congratulations to Nigel. They came in strong here. Really impressed with the pace they showed there, particularly in qualifying. But yeah, I mean, it's good to finally be back on the podium. It's been a couple races, so we needed that.
Of course, you weren't here last week for the race at Pocono, so you have dropped some serious points, realistically, in the standings, and you had your incident with Brandon Trost at Milwaukee, so really needed a good finish today. P3, good? Is it good enough? And what happens when we go on to Texas next week?
Well, we just got to keep getting finishes. I mean, obviously, if we're going to get back in the championship, we're going to have to finish in front of Matt. We're going to several tracks that we're really comfortable with, particularly Indy and Watkins Glen. So, we're looking to get wins there. We get a win at Texas. We ran really well at Texas at the Justin Wilson race a couple months ago. So we probably have a good card there as well. But it's just got to get back up to the top step of the podium a couple times and put this one away. Just not too many races left, but we're really looking forward to these last couple races in the season.
Hopefully, good luck for you and the rest of your team. Any sponsors you'd like to thank?
I always want to thank the guys at Snake Pit, the guys who are putting on the league, RaceSpot for doing the broadcast, and Obuto for keeping me comfortable during these races.
Awesome. Thank you so much, of course. Tim Holgate today comes home P number 3, a hard-fought P number 3 after hitting everything short of the pace car. But, going to hand it back to you in the studio, Aaron, to finish up.
Absolutely. Hard fought, I think, is about the best way to put it. The points are going to be close as we go to Texas next week. And Cam, final thoughts here. great race here today. Looking ahead to next week, you said you love spectating, but for the drivers next week, it's really sort of the wild card race on the points.
It's it's one of those races that I love watching. Yes. What was it? It was Iowa last season that had the absolute drama of racing in the IndyCar series. But we'll have to see. I mean, Pocono, of course, is a very different track from Texas, but perhaps the same runners will be up there. Perhaps Christopher DeMerit will be up there. Brandon Trano, Brandon Trost might be up there. So we'll have to see between those guys, and of course Tim Holgate, and who could forget, of course, our points leader Matt Pawlowski. So we'll have to see just what is going to unfold over there at Texas Motor Speedway. And I have to say, looking back here at Sonoma, a very satisfying race here at Sonoma of who could manage to recover from their incidents better, and of course Nigel Marnief's absolute domination here today.
Well, what a race it was today. Next week we turn our sights to Texas Motor Speedway, and if you thought tonight was competitive and close, well, you haven't seen anything yet. For Cam Walsh, Rachel Whiteford, I am Aaron Likens. This has been a Race Spot broadcast, also on IndyCar.com. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next week. Good night.
Yes, it all starts here. It's opening day for the Verizon IndyCar Series.
From St. Petersburg, Florida, new cars, some new faces, and an old, solid group of veterans and winners.
Get ready. Stay with them here.
They call it the Valley of the Sun. They're running laps at 155 miles an hour.
Long Beach, California, a beautiful destination city with a huge sandy beach, great marinas, cruise ships, and once a year, the Verizon IndyCars.
The spectacular, undulating Barber Motorsports Park, Indy Grand Prix of Alabama.
The acceleration begins.
The new champion of the Grand Prix of Indianapolis is...
Everyone wants to win. Only one will.
And with those millions watching around the world.
By the way, it's the biggest race of your lives, gentlemen.
Here in the Motor City, in the first of the duel in Detroit.
Business is picking up in turn 7 at Belle Isle.
And the green flag waves at Texas Motor Speedway.
All right, let's go.
Wheel to wheel at 210 miles an hour.
And Honda versus Chevy.
Green flag in the air. Sebastian Bourdais is the leader. In the core of America's heartland is a tiny track that packs a speedy IndyCar punch like no other.
Green, green, green.
Well, let's go racing in Iowa.
He's a penalty.
This is Indy Toronto, and the green flag flies.
Oh, there
he's
it
making
comes.
a move, but he's going to make him go to the wet. Deep into turn 3.
Oh.
Maybe too deep.
Welcome to the Buckeye State. Drivers, start your engines!
There is a giant crowd at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course.
All right, that's it. Excellent job, young man. Excellent job. You won Mid-Ohio.
The tricky triangle is definitely very tricky.
Look at this pack now.
He's not giving him anything. That's how you're supposed to race.
Over Labor Day weekend of 2016, we will welcome and host the Grand Prix of Boston.
It's the Indy Grand Prix of Sonoma. It's the championship decider. It's time to bring the action.
Race fans, there they are.